First things first, recording this in early June of 2020, and it's insane to me that this needs to be said, but Black Lives Matter. If you have a problem with that statement, we should not work together. Feel free to watch the videos, feel free to learn something, but I will not work with people who cannot understand why that needs to be said, why it's a shame that it still needs to be said, and that we all have a ton of work to do to make sure that that is not an issue in the future. We're a long way away from that. We've got a lot of work to do for me, for everyone to make that happen, but it is essential that all of us put in the work to make sure that Black people do not need to fear for their lives as they go about their day-to-day business. So we're going to talk about content that's unrelated, but nothing can happen absent of context, and that is the context in which all of us live. Black Lives Matter. So today's video focuses on reopening after lockdowns from COVID-19 and getting past the very simplistic takes I've been seeing from politicians, but also online and various things that I've seen written up that talks about either reopening or staying shut. And obviously it's not a matter of one or the other, it's a very nuanced middle ground. So today's video focuses on, as we begin to reopen, what does that look like for your particular organization? What do you need to look out for? What are some key things that you need to be thinking about? And I'm using the metaphor as we go through this of recovering from an injury. So again, it's that notion of you're not fully back to health, everything's not totally normal, but you do need to start working out again. You need to start going back to what you know how to do, and how do we make sure that we can transition from being shut to being open in a productive way. The first part of this is a mindset shift. And what you need to get in your mind is saying, I'm not just going to go back to being the organization I was before, because your organization is different, the environment is different, the economy is different. All of that is going to have changed. You're not just going to be able to bounce back in the same way that a player returning from a major injury isn't able to just be the exact same player they were before. Now, again, in both cases, you can have a great organization, be a great player, but how you go about that is probably going to be different. You'll have different limitations, you'll have different opportunities, and if your only mindset is, let's just get back to what we were before, you're going to run into all kinds of problems. So, as we start to lift lockdown, as a leader, if you're thinking about your organization, don't be in a rush to get back to whatever you were before. Spend the time to analyze what kind of organization should we be in the new environment in which we exist. And that will change, but it's definitely not exactly what it was when we went into lockdown, whether that was for you and your country days ago, weeks ago, or months ago. The environment in which you're emerging into and returning and reopening to is going to be different. Your organization needs to be different. Get that first as a foundational mindset. So as you're reopening, think about what scars have been left behind by the lockdowns, by you having to shut down your organization for however long it's been shut down for. So again, it's not just about we're going to bounce back in the same way, but there are going to be scars left behind. Some of those scars are easy to see, easy to sense, easy to assess. Some of those you might not be able to see because you're not looking for them. Doesn't make you a bad person. You just don't happen to see them, or you don't think they're important. So it's really essential that you get feedback from other people, both inside and outside of your organization. What kind of scars has the shutdown left on us as humans, on your employees, on your colleagues, on your suppliers, on ourselves, and also on how our organization works? Supply chains, suppliers, retailers, banking, all of those types of things. What are the scars left? So again, if you've returned from a major injury, you'll know that there's scar tissue, that your knee doesn't quite flex the way it normally does, the way that your muscle strength needs a while to come back, or that muscles just don't work the way they used to. You need to be able to get a sense of what's going to work slightly differently now and what might never be an option for us again, and we need to think about a way to work around that. So as you're collecting that information about what scars are there, about what kind of challenges are going to be facing your organization and your people, what's going to need to work differently, you need to start making a plan for, okay, here's the scars that we're seeing, here's the things that used to work in one way and don't work in that way anymore. Here's a plan for us thinking about how can we do that differently. Now, for some organizations, that might mean getting rid of something. So this has been a time for a lot of us to reassess, is what we're doing without COVID-19 before lockdown, did it actually make sense, or was it just a habit or a rut that we had gotten into that actually isn't productive anyway. So this is your chance now to say, it's fine that that thing is sort of broken because it's not really fit for purpose anyway. So here's a chance to not bring it back, to get it out of the way. In other cases, those scars will show you this is something that's really important and it doesn't quite work the way it used to. So in a lot of organizations, what they're going through now as they reopen is a matter of trust. Do our employees trust our leaders, that the leaders are looking out for the employees? Or are they just there to do a service, to do a job? Are we in this together? Is the number one thing profit? Or is it actually about people as well? And are we weighing those things out in a way that we're all comfortable with? So those scars can be, again, in a process. It can be a rule or a regulation that doesn't work. It can be in matters very much on the human side of things, in terms of, is there trust? Is there compassion? Do I feel empathy? Do I feel support? Those are things that maybe existed before COVID-19 or before the lockdown. Those things may have been damaged or just need to be reassessed and reinvigorated as you move to reopening. Central to that, as I said at the beginning, is to have conversations. Open, frank, sometimes very difficult conversations, to get a sense of where people are. In a lot of the debates we're seeing now, people are saying, I want to get back to work, or I'm scared to go back to work, and there's a middle ground in there. Most people who want to get back to work also have some fear about going back to work in this environment. Lots of people who have fear about it really would like to have a steady paycheck coming in and would like to know that their employment is going to be there. So it's not black or white in this really clear delineation. So you need to, in these cases where there is tons of gray, have real open, honest conversations with people. And again, in this case, you're not just telling, you need to be, as a leader, thinking about how can I help encourage my people to share scary, troubling, very personal information about how they're seeing what it's going to be like to reopen. You may have a plan. You might be the CEO, the CFO, whatever, the head of an organization. You might have a plan, and that plan might make sense. But your organization only works if people connected to the organization buy into it. So you need to take the time, the effort, show the compassion and the empathy to engage with your people, to get a sense of not just what are the issues we're confronting, but what are some steps we can do to carry that forward that people will buy into. And then you need to make sure that as you start to implement, you are continuing to engage with people so that you have an ongoing chance to get feedback from them to see as the world changes, as reopening either speeds up or slows down, as new information comes out, are we aware of that? Are we able to stay in tune with our people? And again, I would say this is what you should be doing all the time in organizations, whether you're in a pandemic or not, but especially now, you need to invest in helping to show that you are trying to understand, that you are trying to engage, and that you do care, and that that feedback you're getting is being turned into actionable steps within the organization. Finally, in this example of an athlete returning from injury and organizations reopening, is thinking about as you come back, an athlete will know, okay, I need to do certain exercises at a lower weight, I need to ease into this, but also that some exercises are no longer possible. So I've got a bad shoulder now, there's certain lifts I can't do in the gym. Or I've got arthritis in my knee, there's certain things I can't do in terms of running that induce stress. So yes, I need to be in tip-top shape, but I might need to exercise and train differently. Same with an organization as you come back. It's thinking about what are we really trying to accomplish and recognizing the ways in which we accomplish those things might be different now, and we need to start to work differently and train differently. It's in some ways much harder to do that because your old habits, the things that you knew you could repeat and count on over time, may no longer be there as supports. And that is a very scary place, not only for leadership, but for everyone in the organization. So as we talked about before, it's about having those conversations. What do we need to do differently? How do we do things differently? And what do you need to put in place as a leader to make sure those things happen? So if your organization needs to operate in a different way, if people need to be having different conversations, if they need to be engaged in different processes, you need to figure out how do we support people to make that change. So there's a very old article from Lisa Follett from 1927 that says, giving orders is not the same as providing training. So you can't come back from lockdown, you can't reopen and say, hey, you need to operate differently, you need to work differently because the old way doesn't work, here's the new way, good luck. You need to be engaged and say, this is the issues we're seeing, here's some suggestions we're making for changes. what are the supports we need to put in place to make that happen? So that might be reorganizing the structures of your organization. That might be reorganizing different groups or departments or divisions within your organization. That might be providing training. And to be clear, that doesn't necessarily mean going out and sending people for a master's degree or a doctorate or a diploma, or bringing in someone like me as an external consultant to train that. There could be expertise within your organization, but you need to look around and say, what are the learnings we need to do in order to make sure we can do these new things in effective ways? So again, it's not about an action plan saying, now go do. It needs to be, we need to do these things, and what do we need to do to support the change from one way of working to another way of working? So the key takeaways from this: don't go back to the old reality. That reality is gone. Have a mindset of starting from when we reopen, we're reopening into a new reality. We're going to need to work and think differently to exist in that new reality. 2, you're going to need to engage with your people, get feedback. What are the scars? What damage has been caused by being in lockdown, by COVID-19 scaring people? We're returning to work in a pandemic still. So what scars are there? What scars do I see versus what scars do my colleagues and my employees and my external partners see? And what can we do, crucially, 3rd, to address those? We can't come back and do things in the old way, in the same way. We're probably going to need to do some things differently. How can we think about how to action those things? And lastly, thinking about, as you reopen, what are the supports we're going to need to put in place? What are the things to support people as they try out these new things in a new environment that is scary, whether that's from a business perspective or a health perspective? These are very scary times for people. So how do we support our particular people? What do my people need from us that might be different than what they needed before? How do we make sure that as we reopen, we do that in a way where we're engaged, where everyone feels committed, and where people feel safe and connected to what the organization is trying to do? I hope that's helpful for you. This is probably one of the scariest, most trying times that I've been through in my 42 years. If I can be of help to you or your organization, as all of us try to deal with the ongoing troubles that our societies are facing, please let me know. I'm always happy to engage.
Cause